Okay, guys, it has been a really long time since we last spoke, and I think it's time I give you guys an update. But I thought it would be fun to give you a life update from the lens of lessons I've learned from taking a 3 month trip solo on my own. Wait, solo and on my own is the same thing. You get it. But I thought as well, I would share this because there's been a lot of people in my world that I've been meeting lately who have either shared with me their desire to just go on a solo trip and maybe even a spontaneous one and just finally pull the plug, or other people that I've met who are in the thick of their journey trying to figure it out. And I have come to realize that there are stages to this thing, and there's a common underlying root underneath why we would likely want to just randomly decide to uproot and travel. And a lot of the connotations around doing this kind of experience is about just releasing, about finding ourselves and figuring it out, or reconnecting with who we are, or healing. And I find that coming to Bali, this is where so many people go as their first destination to really seek out that relationship with themselves and to really discover like more about what they can do, or to maybe experience the digital nomad life. And I feel like in my audience right now there's a beautiful blend of people who are definitely settled down, who love where they are in life, and just want more clarity and tools and skill sets to move through life better. And then on the other end of the spectrum are people who are maybe very much searching, seeking, maybe going through a transition, or feeling really lost and overwhelmed, and are leaning towards doing an experience like this that I've done, the surrender experiment, to find meaning and purpose in their life. And as I've come back to Canggu, where I started my entire 3 month journey, I was telling my partner last night that I feel like a new person. I honestly feel like I just have so much clarity, so much inner peace. And the reality is, I'm actually not going home to a situation that is much easier. I'm actually going home to basically nothing. I don't even have a place to live. I don't even know where I'm going to live. I have basically spent everything that I saved, and I am going to be figuring out what to do from here. And yet, I feel so clear, so transparent, so peaceful, and undisturbed by all of the external chaos and noise that my brain and my primitive self is like, you need to panic and worry about this. And I feel like that is the byproduct of really doing this surrender experiment well. And so, for those of you who are in this season, or maybe are thinking of doing something like this, I thought this episode might be a great way for you to prepare yourself for what to expect might happen. And look, not everyone's experience is going to be the same, but this is just me sharing my own experience, and hopefully you can get some clarity, direction, and assurance from it. And so that is why I have titled this episode, What to Expect When You Travel Solo. Or I don't know if I'm going to end up titling that. That's just what I have on my notes in front of me. But I'm going to go through what is probably going on underneath that you may not be aware of, that's making you feel like you need to go and find yourself or travel solo. And then the second thing is, I'm going to go through what might come up for you while you're traveling or while you're doing this trip. Because I didn't know what the heck I was signing myself up for. And holy smokes, it changed my whole damn life. And I want to give you a heads up of some of the things that might come up for you that you're going to have to deal with. And lastly, I'm going to go through how to handle it, how to carry yourself through this season so that you can go through it well and you're not feeling like a total mess. So before I go into it, I feel like update wise, like I said, I'm back where I started my trip, and it's just been so freaking wholesome to reconnect with people who I met on my first few weeks here, and to come back like knowing now why I needed to be here. It's just so wholesome. I can't find another word to describe it. And going through the last like 3 months or so, it really solidified for me what I value in this life. Like going home, I've got all these things waiting for me that I need to worry about. Like, how am I going to make money? Where am I going to live? Am I going to settle? Do I have money to invest? And like, all my friends are doing these things, these adult things. So, per se, but I just don't feel bothered by it anymore. And I really realized that it solidified for me what matters to me. And because I was in this space surrounded by people who had very similar values, people who were digital nomads, people who valued travel, people who valued spontaneity, I was able to have this sort of unseen ecosystem to feel like that was normal and that was okay. Because back home, there's no one else who has that mindset, or there's very little community for that, because obviously I live in a city and everybody's like just wanting to work and settle down and have stability. But that's not my vibe, and I felt like a black sheep back home. But now coming back, I'm like, there's a whole world out there of people who do this, and this is their norm, and this is how they make money, and this is the reality that they give themselves. And I've heard so many stories of people who've just spent their whole life traveling and have never had a place that they've called home. And they've always made income remotely on their laptops. And it's just like so wild because there's no one at home showing you that that's available for you, but it so is. And all you need to do is get in an environment where it is normal. And then you'll just stop feeling like you're an alien. So I feel like, yeah, this trip really solidified for me what I value, and I'm more unapologetic about the things that I want for myself, and I don't feel like I need to prove it to anyone. Also, another life update is, I guess another life update slash lesson is that I've come to know that the right people or the opportunities and the people that are meant for you will find you in their own time in the right ways. And it's so funny because I came on this trip thinking to myself, I'm gonna meet people, I'm gonna collaborate with people, I want to meet locals, and like I had this like full-blown picture of what I wanted my Bali surrender experience to be like. But I feel like every time I tried to force something, it just wouldn't work. And yet, when I actually released, so many incredible things would happen. I would get invited to things that I never thought I'd be invited to. And the most fun update is that tomorrow I'm actually going to be hosting an event for women here in Bali with a friend of mine who hosts this massive and incredible female community that I've been a part of since day one of my trip. And it just so happens that I bonded with her like just like that. And I remember having the thought early on when I met her, like I would love to collaborate with her, but also feeling in my heart of hearts that it just wasn't a good idea to mention anything right now. And so I just completely took the reins off, and then took my hands off the reins, and then like right before I'm about to leave, she messages me, and we're going to host this women's circle and unravel event. So I'm taking an event that I usually would do back home, and I'm doing it here in Bali. And I didn't plan for this. I didn't ask for a platform. It was handed to me. And I feel like that's just the beauty of surrendering and letting the things that are meant for you find you in their right time. Because in the same way, preparing for this event, we usually would just announce the things on the WhatsApp thread for this female community. But I was like, I feel like I need to announce it on my stories. I don't know why, but I just feel like somebody in my audience, even though my audience is based in Sydney, not in Bali, I was like, somebody in my audience is going to need this. And I don't know whether they're going to be traveling to Bali or they're already in Bali right now on a holiday or something, but somebody I know who's on my page is going to need this, so why not? And I trusted that. And turns out a girl, her name is Belle, and she had been following me at just the right time and had needed just the right thing, and she was thinking about doing a solo trip. And so she saw this event, she registered for the event before having booked her flights, and then she went and booked her flight. Seeing the event was what made her decide that she was going to go and do the freaking trip. And I was just so blown, like mind blown, insanely mind blown, because I was just like, how could that be that one thing could align with another, and it could really be the pathway that makes somebody's transformation journey? And I think that's the beauty of the way the universe works, or the way God works, because there's this higher there's this bigger picture, this higher power that we just cannot describe, and always has the best knowledge for what's best for us. And so my entire trip has just been filled with so many of these serendipitous moments. And I feel like coming back home and now entering another chapter of my life, I just have so much certainty. I feel like I've really seen God work just His grace and His miracles in my life to support me, to make sure I'm taken care of. And it has made me just have unwavering doubt that I'm going to be okay no matter what. And the thing about it as well is that I have come back to my personal calling. I've come to really distinguish the difference between a career and a calling. And I think for a long time, I really identified my calling with my career. Because you know what? Being a business coach is fabulous. I love it. I'm skilled at it. I'm incredible at it. And it's something that I work so hard to build, that skill set. But when I started feeling this calling to really lean in, and if you watched a few episodes back where I share the story of the healing trip that I did and what I discovered there about my personal purpose, I was just mind blown that coming out of this trip, that's the message that I was going to walk away with, that I actually need to stop hiding behind the skill set or the career or the identity that I've become so secure and attached to for validation, and to actually release and step into my personal purpose, my calling. That if I did that, that I would feel so much more peace and so much more alignment, and success will follow and money will follow. And I just feel that like with full certainty. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, and I hope you do at some point in your life, because I think we mistake our personal calling for our businesses and our careers. And while our personal calling may be expressed in our business and our career paths, I think sometimes we just have to do a little audit to see if it's still that way, if maybe we've lost sight of why we're here. And for reference, for me, like I always said, look, I'm meant to be a business coach. That's my calling. I'm meant to help people make money. I'm meant to help people develop these skills, because that's how they access freedom and independence. And those are the things I really stand for. But now coming away and looking at like my personal calling is to be a healer, to be a spiritual leader, to be a facilitator, a woman who leads like people, who shares her journey and lets other people be inspired by it. Like there's so many more other layers that could not be expressed in that tiny little pathway of telling myself I'm a business coach. I'm meant to be a business coach. See, when it's your calling, like you just fit right into it. You don't spend any time questioning whether it's going to work or not, because even when you don't think it's working or you don't have any tangible evidence that it's working, you just have this innate belief that it is. And on any given day, no matter how hard it is, it's always going to be worth it to you to continue to stay your path. Whereas if it's something you're driven towards, or it's something your skill or a career you're trying to make work, it's going to feel really exhaustive. And there are going to be days where you're like, am I really meant for this? And I think it's just that slight difference that I've come to know on this trip. And I'm just so grateful for, because I know that like me knowing this will truly help me make more clearer, more aligned decisions for myself, my business, my time, my energy, my relationships, and everything else in my life. So I mean that when I say I hope you experience something like that level of discovery. And the final thing I will say, like a little life update, is I honestly can't wait to do this over and over again. I think I've come to a point where I'm like, yeah, this is what I want. Like I've given myself the full permission to really want this lifestyle. And the thing is, I thought it was the travel component that really appealed to me. Like I just wanted location independence, but I feel like it's not. To a degree, yes, definitely. That's partly, why I want to have a digital business. But I think it's the fact that who I am as a person is someone who loves to share other people's stories. And I love to be part of other people's stories. And so when I think of the things that light me up the most in my business journey so far, And in my life journey, it was those moments where I was able to really journey with people to help them grow and to share my story, to be on a platform, to lead people. Like, these are the things that I'm like, these light me up way more than all the other things. And it's like a clue for, like, if I just did more of those things, if I just leaned into those things, like speaking, talking, presenting, doing one-on-ones, hosting experiences, retreats, travel, like, the path will form itself. And I think booking the flight here really was that window of just like the portal that opened up me being able to experience this. And if you're somebody who's like either just booked your flight or you're thinking of booking your flight, like, that is the breaking point, or that is the window at which everything's going to start happening. And it has to be the most uncomfortable action. And that's why booking the flight is technically, it tends to be the most uncomfortable action, because it's the thing that, it's so simple. You just like get online, click a button, put your card details in, that's it. But it's the decision that so many of us spend our whole lives waiting to make. But if you just made that decision, and it takes a single moment to make the decision, it really can be the portal to which your entire life blows up. It changes everything. And I love that. I love that about the nature of decisions, because decisions don't have to take a long time to materialize. If you decide and you really mean it, and then you book the flight, from the moment you book that flight, that's the moment everything changes. And that's the same thing that happens with my clients. Like, from the moment you are courageous enough to click send or click pay on the checkout link to confirm that you're going to do coaching or to pay for that program, it's going to be the scariest freaking thing you might have ever done in your life and with your money. But even if you don't start your coaching until months down the line, you watch, your transformation will begin in that moment, because money's got a chokehold over us. And we're not used to putting money towards the things we value and the things we want. We're not used to setting our own rules for how we relate to our money and how our money supports us. And so if you're somebody who's like on the verge of a decision that requires money, and it most definitely will, because everything requires money, in those cases, I urge you to let yourself be brave for that moment and watch as it changes your life. Yeah. Okay, now let's get into it. So, like I said, we're going to start off with what is probably going on underneath if you are experiencing this thing where you're like, I want to uproot and I want to go and travel. I want to just do a spontaneous trip. I want to find myself. If this is the range of things you're experiencing, feeling, going through, and you're booking or you have booked a solo trip, here's what I think could be going on underneath, based on what I know from my personal experience and the women that I have spoken to about their experiences doing this. And I feel like when we are seeking for something outside of ourselves, like when we're seeking for a certain experience or a big, like, just close your eyes and do it, like a big leap, sometimes it is not always coming from a place of love and a place of fulfillment and expansion. Sometimes the desire to take the leap and do that uncomfortable thing that you've been putting off for so long is coming from the energy of, I just want to get away from my situation. And it's not like that's bad. We don't want to make that wrong or bad. It's just about acknowledging it, right? If you're doing this trip or you're making a big decision, all of a sudden, on a whim, and your vibe about it is like, I'm just going to close my eyes and do it and stuff it. Let's see what happens. While that may come from a really like healthy place, you just want to notice if there's a part of it though that's coming from avoidance and fear. And it's not bad at all. It's noticing. It means becoming aware of, like, what am I afraid of? What am I potentially trying to run away from or trying to mask by doing this thing? Because in a way, what you're doing is like you're jumping into something that's going to give you a thrill. And, you know, it's kind of like that adrenaline junkie high or addiction, right? addiction happens when we want to numb how we feel about something, or we don't want to face how we feel about something. And so we find something else that gives us a high or gives us a pleasure, and then we want that high. And it keeps us distracted from dealing with the thing that needs to be dealt with, right? So it's like becoming aware that there is truly a reason why you want to uproot and do this thing, right? And there's also a reason why you spent so long thinking about doing it. Like, you have to validate that, right? Don't discredit the fact that you took time and energy to really think about this decision. And if it's a big decision, you probably thought about it for a while. Like for me, before doing this trip, I was thinking about it for like 6 whole months. And don't discredit that. Like, just because you close your eyes and did it doesn't mean you should just move on because you've done it. I think it's so important to normalize taking the time to think about what we were thinking about, right? And this is different to trying to figure out how and why things are happening. You don't need to figure all that out. You just need to think about why you were thinking that way, right? Like, why did it cost me so much time and energy to do this? To make a decision for myself that I know is already going to serve me. Like, why did I feel so paralyzed to spend the money on myself? That's the high quality thinking that you need to be doing, because that's going to teach you something about what you need to learn or process or evolve through in this next chapter. You don't want to go into this trip feeling like you are just running away from something. And it's funny because I totally get this. My first month, I was feeling that way. I felt all sorts of guilt and shame settle in after my first week or so, when the excitement had died down and I really realized what I was doing. Like, what the heck? Am I having a quarter life crisis? Right? And excuse me. And from that place, I started to really experience the heaviness sinking in of like, I don't know what I'm doing. And am I even meant for this? And I felt really like I was just questioning everything. I was questioning whether I was capable. And that was such a hard time. But in saying that, if you don't let that be your identity, like you don't entertain it and you don't go, well, yeah, I'm officially a wreck. I'm officially confused. And you just let that be something you feel in the moment, and then you let it pass through you, you're going to have the clarity to get up and to observe yourself, to observe what's happening in your brain, what's happening inside of you. And you're going to have the resilience to be like, okay, let's work through this. This is some big work. And I didn't know this was going on underneath. And that's the other thing. A lot of the time, you're not going to know what's going on underneath. There are things that we desire in life that we think are going to give us salvation. We think that that car, once we get it, we're going to be saved from something. We're going to be saved from the feeling of, I'm not cool enough, or I don't have enough money. We think that once we hit that income goal, we're going to feel more validated. We're going to feel more successful. We think once we book that trip and once we finally get to experience that digital nomad life, that it's going to save us from the experience of like feeling really miserable about where we are. We think it's just going to automatically just elevate our lives. But that's not how it works. Often there's a lot going on underneath that we're just not acknowledging, and the highs that we chase, the goals that we chase, are just ways that we numb that and we get addicted to the high. But imagine the quality of your life if you learn how to sit with the thing that is keeping you afraid, the thing that maybe you're trying to run from, and was able to give yourself those experiences. And I think that's the beautiful balance of having a sense of peace and wholeness and okayness with where you are in your life. Because a lot of the time, I think it's that like we are not okay with where we are. We don't let it be okay that we are where we are. And so we try to cover it up with stuff, with accomplishments, accolades, money, experiences, highs, And so what could probably be going on underneath? On one end, it could just be that you just really need a release and you haven't given yourself permission to release and have fun and do something spontaneous, and it just finally bubbled up and you're like, yeah, stuff it, let's do it. But what might be even more helpful is to explore, what did you need the release from? And that's something that you wouldn't have thought of, okay? And it's not going to be clear right away. I came here and I shared this in the other podcast episode about my healing journey. I did not know that I needed healing from something, and I just felt it that I needed to be here to discover something about myself. And then I just kind of let it happen. And then little did I know, like, I had so much stuff going on that was really holding me back. So much stuff just buried under the surface that was limiting me. And I didn't even know it, right? I had gotten so used to convincing myself that I was okay, that I forgot that I was wounded and in need of healing. And I think if you're a woman, you're a high functioning woman, and you relate to that productivity hustle vibe, then you probably get this, because we get so good at that. We become masters at masking our wounds. And that's why sometimes these things bubble up and then they come out as desires to go and travel and to be free. But think about like the desire. I think this is so helpful as well. Think about the thing you desire. Maybe it's the income goal. Maybe it's the 1 month of just solo travel with no inhibitions. Think about that thing on its own. What does that thing symbolize? Maybe it symbolizes a freedom. Maybe it symbolizes a letting loose. And you want to think about it, like the desire that you have for that is so big that it's manifested into a physical action, a material thing, and now you're chasing for that thing. But that desire, let's say it's the desire to be free of responsibilities and to just not have to care about anything. That's the thing that you think that thing will give you. If you just ask yourself, like, what if I could give that to myself now? What would that look like? What if I didn't need that thing to happen and I just found ways to meet that need right now? You're going to realize that you are very capable of doing that. We are very capable of creating the feeling of, I don't need to take any more responsibility than I have. I'm allowed to let loose right now. I'm allowed to say no to things. But often we think that a change in circumstance is how we're going to create those feelings and that experience. But you can create it right now. You can literally say to somebody, no, I've got too much on my plate. I can't take that on. Or no, I'm sorry, I don't want to go to the party. I just want to take time with myself to not have to meet anybody else's expectations. It's really just that simple. But we're not used to doing life that way. So we set goals, we try to attain the goals because we think the goals or the change in the circumstance will be what creates the feeling that we want. And so just notice, like, it's not bad, it's not wrong. Don't make yourself wrong for doing anything. But just notice, let it be an opportunity to observe what's going on in this chapter of your life right now. Maybe the reason why you're going through this is because deep down, you haven't acknowledged that you're actually really not happy where you are. And desiring to go on this spontaneous trip might be a way for you to escape that. And not having a plan for your trip might be a reflection of how you're not willing to take responsibility for the results you create in life. Like, let those be clues. And again, look, I don't know your situation, so don't let me assume. Do the work for yourself. It's going to change your life, and it's going to help you so much on your journey if you're in the beginning of your journey or if you're still in the middle of it. Okay, so what might come up for you during this time? Look, a lot of stuff from the past is going to come up for you. And it might not be as obvious right away, but it will show in random waves of emotion. So I just want you to, in this time, really understand that, especially if you're traveling, like, you need to develop a relationship with yourself where you can tune in and check in. And the good thing about travel is it actually helps you to do that naturally, because you don't have anybody else telling you what to do. There's no structure that you're used to. You really just have to, like, wake up, decide what you want to do, and feel what you feel, and then keep going. And then if you're in situations where you're feeling threatened, unsafe, uncertain, or like isolated because you don't know anyone, you're going to need to depend on yourself. When you're traveling or when you're doing anything solo, like you're always having a dialogue with yourself. And I think that's why doing things solo is such a powerful way and an efficient way to build healthy self-dialogue, because you get to know your own voice and your own thoughts, kind of like going hiking or going surfing, or like doing the thing that just like you can get lost in flow and in the zone doing, because all you have is yourself. And that's like a beautiful place to be in a lot of the time. And so for you, if you're like going on this trip, like your own version of surrender experiment or a transition in life where you're trying to figure it out, your most important goal is to really get to know your own voice and to have regular conversations with yourself. And I think the healthiest way to check in is always just, if you don't know what thoughts or how to start a dialogue with yourself, just check in with how you're feeling in your body. This has helped me so much. It's helped so many people that I work with to just have the skill of like, what am I feeling in my body? Emotion is just energy in motion, right? And energy is always moving, it's always vibrating. And so there are vibrations, there are reactions that your body is having to anything at any given time. And so if you're allowing yourself the time, the space to slow down and to feel what you're feeling, and then to name that feeling, to name whether it feels good in your body or if it feels constricting, to explore what clues it might be giving you for how to behave in response to that emotion, or how to talk to yourself to explore that emotion, that's going to help you so much to, again, understand where you are for that day. And I think that in this chapter of your life, or on this surrender experiment trip that you do, it's so important that you set the intention to do this. Like, there's going to be the thrill of like, you want to do anything and everything, and there's activities everywhere, there's sights to see. But notice if that behavior or like that desire to just keep filling your schedule up with stuff is just avoidance. The hard work is actually doing nothing. The hard work is actually intentionally going, I'm not going to book a single thing this morning, and I'm just going to spend time really unpacking what's going on for me. Right? Because like for me at least, I had to get to a point where I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't want to just be filling my day with stuff. I don't want to be just busy like I was at home. I want to really do this. I want to really get to the bottom of what's happening for me. And that's where the liberation came. Another thing that might come up for you is a lot of guilt and resentment, maybe even feeling like you made the wrong decision. I was telling my partner this yesterday, that a lot of the right decisions that we make in life start with things that feel like a wrong decision. A lot of the things that ultimately change our entire story and direction in life are things that started off feeling like they were wrong, where we had no support, where we didn't know why we were doing it and what we had signed ourselves up for. But those are the moments at which everything actually changes. And I think that if you're in a moment where like you just have that moment where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? What have I done? Why am I in this situation? Why didn't I just stay where I was? If you have that moment of remorse, resentment, guilt, and panic, let it be just something that you're like, but I'm so glad. I'm so glad that one day I'm going to look back at this and be so proud that I did it. Because I promise you that's going to be your experience every single time. If you know in your core, like you cannot explain it, but you know in your core that you're meant to do something, like just freaking do it. Be brave for that moment and just believe that this is a defining moment in your life, and show up in that season of life in a way that you would be proud of, right? Show up in a way where you get to look back at your own story and say, I am so glad I showed up that way. I'm so glad that behind closed doors, I was believing in myself. That even when no one else was believing in me, even when it didn't make sense to anybody else, I'm so glad I committed to that. I was willing to look crazy. And I love it. I've had so many moments in my life, in my journey like that. And I can't tell you, it's just, I've embodied it. Like, it's who I am. And when I'm doing a air quotes crazy thing that no one will understand, I just kind of own it, because I'm like, yeah, these are the moments that make my story, girl. This is how I end up with the life that I have. You just wait. Right? Write your own story. Don't let it look like everybody else's. Okay, so the final thing that I want to share with you is how to carry yourself through this season because it's a big season. And if you're going through an experience like I am, where maybe you book the trip and then after the trip, you're obviously going to go back to your home or your base, you're going to be tempted to believe that your transformation has to kind of end or wrap up at the end of your trip. But that's not true. Your transformation could be for the next few years. And in fact, we're always evolving. So we're always transforming. But like this process of healing, rediscovery, reconnection, realignment, like all of this is something that happens like as an ongoing thing. And it often doesn't happen very quickly. The discovery might happen very quickly where you're like, oh my gosh, like just like the mind blown moment of realizing like I've been living so small or I've been believing these wounds are who I am. Like you're going to have that moment and it might come up like fireworks, but the amount of healing and transformation that it's going to take to really pick yourself up, to be resilient through that, to then have to figure out like where to from here. How do I apply this? How do I be this new version of myself in my world? That takes time. That takes actually like going into the ring of life and testing it, being this new version of you and being willing to be it over and over and over again. That takes commitment and resilience. So how you want to handle it is with lots of grace. You want to handle this season of your life, giving yourself so much patience and grace to go through things the way you need to go through things. And kind of just like grieving or going through a breakup, you want to acknowledge that like there are going to be days where you feel like you've just like moved through it already and that it's done, like the line has been drawn. But then all of a sudden you're going to just like it's just going to come up. The emotion is just going to come up or the confusion is going to come up again. And don't make that wrong. Like I need you to understand that. Don't make that wrong. Because if you make it wrong, you invalidate it. You tell yourself, you're basically telling yourself, you are not allowed to feel that way. You are wrong for feeling that way. And that is just so restricting. It's like dehumanizing. And why would you relate to yourself that way? So if you feel sad today and you don't know why, because you were happy yesterday or you had a really productive day yesterday, but all of a sudden today you feel really lost, you feel really clueless again. Don't make that wrong. Don't judge yourself for it. Don't try to force yourself out of it. Like, sit with it. Let the emotion exist. Let it pass through your body. Let yourself chuck a fit. Let yourself cry. Let yourself do whatever you need to do to get it out of your system. And literally shake it out, right? And then you'll have the clarity to process what just happened. And that is actually a clue for how to move forward. Like animals, right? Animals literally, when they go through a traumatic experience, they literally have to shake their body, like kind of like shake it out to get it out of their system, right? Because emotions are stored in our body. Trauma is stored in our body. And if an emotion doesn't have the space or the time to pass through our system and we hold on to it or we suppress it or we just like kind of slap a band-aid over it, it gets stored there. And it builds up as tension, it builds up as illness. And that's why we always want to let our emotions pass through. That's an entire episode in and of itself, but that's the key, right? Give yourself lots of grace and let yourself feel. Let yourself feel. Do you know how much stuff is happening in your life right now as a byproduct of you not letting yourself feel? A lot of stuff that you don't want to be happening, and you're trying to change what's happening by actions and things on an external level, but all you really needed to do in the beginning was to let yourself feel. And if you had let yourself feel, maybe you wouldn't have gotten into that relationship that you were using to feel validated because you didn't feel validated. You didn't let yourself feel that you weren't feeling validated. If you had let yourself feel that you were not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy of love, then maybe you would have taken care of yourself in a different way. Maybe you wouldn't have gotten into a relationship right away and be in this situation. And look, this isn't about making you feel bad or regretful. This is just about acknowledging the patterns that are keeping you creating the same results in life. right? So maybe, just maybe, you need to let yourself feel a little bit more, a little bit harder, a little bit longer. Okay? The final thing that I want to say, which is a really fun way to end, is let yourself reconnect back to your inner child. I know that sounds like some self-help guru thing to say, but look, your inner child is really just the child version of you, period, right? Don't make it weird. Your inner child is the version of you who did exist in this lifetime, who loved to play, who could see the wonder in life, who wasn't trapped or restricted by certain definitions and constructs. So the child version of you, she may have loved to dance, to sing, to laugh, to read. Like there would have been things that just lit her up. And you'll find that as an adult, you'll have moments where you feel like you're a child again. When you're doing those same things, when you're letting yourself dance, when you're letting yourself sing out loud, when you're letting yourself just take a day off to take care of you, or you let your imagination play a bit, you get hints of this connection to who you were as a child, but we don't get it enough. We don't live life from that place because somewhere along the way, we were conditioned to believe that we had to release those things in order to make a living, or in order to fit in, or in order to be enough. But it's those things, it's reconnecting to those activities and those beliefs about yourself. Like, I'm a great singer. I love to play. I love to be in the sun. Like, dancing lights me up. All these things, it's reconnecting to these things that are really going to help you feel like yourself again. And for a lot of you who are going through this season of seeking in your life or transformation, feeling connected to yourself is so important. Just like the self-dialogue thing I was saying earlier, it's so important because it brings you back to baseline. It brings you back to being able to be in your own body and to create a safe experience for yourself inside of your own body. When you don't feel safe in your own body or in your own mind, you just want to avoid it. You want to numb it. You want to do stuff to get away from it. But what a terrible experience of life. What a terrible existence to live that way. And so my challenge for you is to let yourself reconnect more with your inner child, to do the things that you maybe stopped doing. And for entrepreneurs or anybody who is working for themselves or a creative, if you have a certain type of expression, like you're a writer or you're a reader, what? You're a writer, you dance, maybe you sing, you paint, whatever it is that you do that really did light you up as a child, set time to do it and to do it often. And let that nostalgic feeling, that warm hug from the inside feeling, be an experience that you have often. Even if all it did was just to comfort you, or to just give you that hint of the goodness, that feeling of goodness. We all need more of that. And by leaning into that version of you, you're going to find that your answers are going to make themselves known. Your answers to the toughest, deepest questions that you've been having this whole time will make themselves known to you. They will be found in your expression of who you are. I spoke to a girl this week and she shared with me how she had turned her hobby and her love for writing into a career, and now it had drained her. And it's been so long since she last wrote something just for herself or for fun. And I told her to reconnect back with yourself. A lot of creatives will try to force that relationship back by writing more, or I'm gonna write something for myself. But that very rarely works. It feels like you're just trying to force creativity. But the way you really activate that flow of expression and really reconnecting with yourself is actually by letting yourself feel connected to who you are in your essence. It's like taking care of your basic needs, taking care of your body, giving yourself lots of rest, nourishing your body with good food, good relationships, like feeling emotions like love, joy, peace. If you can take care of those basic survival needs, your expression will just happen. You will just, out of the wholeness of who you are, will naturally want to expand and overflow, and in that you will express in the way that you will naturally express. So if you're a creative, you will totally get this, right? If you're not meeting your own basic human needs, you're basically on survival mode. And so of course your creativity is going to get restricted. But creativity flows out of a healthy, embodied self, a healthy sense of who we are. Creativity it comes from overflow and expression, like your skill of expression, like dancing, writing, singing. You will naturally want to do those things if as a child those were the things that lit you up. So this is why it's so important for you to take this chapter of your life as an opportunity as well to play more and to just be childlike again. I know for me, I've been doing a lot more things, like I've been going to karaoke bars and I love singing. I haven't done it in so long, right? I love singing. I've been dancing. I've been letting myself be a little bit more loose and out of control and just have fun and laugh louder. And it really has reminded me of like who I am, who I was, and how so far away from that identity I've been lately. And reconnecting is just, it in and of itself, reconnecting to that inner child is liberation. It is, it really is. Because childlike energy is like, you just don't care what people think. You're just doing you, you're just having a blast. And I want that for you. So my love, this podcast has been so healing for me just to recount. So I just want to say thank you for listening, because I feel like this was my therapy. But if this helped you, I just want to personally invite you at the end of this episode to reach out to me. Send me a DM, because I have a resource I want to give you. It's called the Becoming Unapologetic as Your Own Damn Self training. And it's a 6-day training. And I want to gift it to you for free. And for so many women that I've met lately, I have gifted this course as a way to bridge the gap to help you move into possibility for yourself and to just begin to develop the awareness of why you are where you are and how to expand into who you're meant to be, which is in essence, it's who you already are, but has been buried maybe by all the things that you think you need to be. And I feel like when women are exactly as they are and they expand into who they are and they're willing to be seen as her, they make massive moves. They are a force to be reckoned with, and that's what I want for you. And if you're going through a season of transition or anything like this, I know it's hard. I know it's long. I know it's like, it's so overwhelming at times, but it is so worth it. Because the version of you that's going to come out on the other side is going to be so incredible. And look, DM me if this connected to you, if this served you in any way, because I want to gift that to you. Okay? Send me a message on Instagram, and I hope I'll catch you in next week's episode. Bye.